Now, in this lesson, we extend our understanding of fractions that we started recently into the concept of hundredths, percentages, and decimals. Okay, that is where our discussion of fraction is going to be headed to. We want to get to understand this concept of hundredths and percentages and decimals. How does it help for us to know? How is it necessary? How is it applied? Okay, how do we apply that concept, for example? Now, it's often difficult to compare fractions with different denominators, okay? Like you can think of 1/2, then 3/5. Now, excuse me, now getting to know, okay? Getting to know which fraction is bigger or which fraction is smaller can be very difficult. But now, if it is unavoidable that we do the comparison, that is, we find out between 1/2 and 3/4, which one is smaller and which one is bigger. The thing we want to do is to express it as a percentage, is to express it in hundreds, okay? Is sometimes to express it as a decimal. That way, we can easily see which quantity is smaller, which other one is bigger. Now, fractions with the same denominator are easier to compare. Well, for this reason and other reasons, fractions are often expressed as what? As a percentage or as a hundredths. A fraction expressed as a hundredths is called a percentage. For example, instead of 600ths, we could say, or we can say 6%, okay? We can say 6% right here, denoted as 6 with the symbol of percent, okay? So this is one way of writing what? Of writing 600ths. We can write it as 6% written in this notation, okay? Now, the symbol for percent, okay, the symbol which I have just indicated here is used to mean a percent. So it comes immediately after the number which is supposed to be expressed as a percent. And so, for example, 5% will be having a 5 with this symbol. 6% will be having 6 with this symbol. Well, now, how are we going to continue? Well, we want to look at this activity 1, and we want to see how we can express numbers as a percentage and also as a decimal. In one previous lesson, we had seen how to transfer a number from a decimal to a percentage. And now in this case, we want to see how to express a number from, okay, how to express a fraction to a percentage. So that is what we are then looking for. So this is activity 1, and the activity 1, in this activity 1, we are supposed to complete the table by filling in the what? The missing values. Now, we have 5/3. If it was a number which was whole, and we are supposed to express it as a percentage, it would be like this. For example, 6 was a whole. So we will start with that as an example, okay? As an example, we will start with 6. So 6 in 100, okay? We have been given 6 what? Hundredths. So So how do we express this? Well, we say this could be written as 6%, or simply 6 with what? With this notation. Now, when we are done with the notation, we can now go ahead to do what? Write it in this real fraction term. And so in that way, we are going to be having a 6, then a 100. And this way, what we get is 0.06 or 0.06. That is what we get. It works for any other number. You could think of what? 1700. Well, this would be 17%. Simply 17 with what? With the notation of the percent, which we can still write in a fraction notation as 17 over what? 17. So this way, what do we get? Well, this way we get 0.17. Now, what if we are given 5/3? Okay, like in this activity. Let's call this activity A. Now in activity 1, part A, what do we have? Well, we have been given 5/3. We could still call this 5/3 hundredths. Yes, we could still call it 5/3 hundredths. And so how do we write this? Well, in the same way, we will be having what? 5/3 by what? Percent. So we do have here 5/3%. Or simply 5/3 with the what? With the symbol for percent. Now, how do we write this? Well, we could have this as this 5/3 will stay up there. Then we will have 100 down here. Is there a way we can simplify that? Well, yes, we could simplify that. This is now going to be what? Maybe let's write it like this, just to make it a little bit easier. Let's find the value of what? We find the value of 5/3 using a calculator, for example. So 5/3 with a calculator would give us a value of 1.67. Okay, this would be 1.67 divided by what? Divided by 100. So in decimal notation, what will that be? Well, in decimal notation, we want to find out what this would be. So under 100, we will be having, well, these zeros coming this way. Or we could just use a calculator. So it will be 1.67 divided by what? By 100. Now, if we are not interested in using a calculator, then there is a table that we could use. Okay, there is a table that we could use for 10, 100, and 1,000. Okay, there is a table we could use for 10, 100, and 1,000. So this table that we can use is one table that I recently shared, on one screen. I guess we can still have it here. Okay, we can still have that table, which I can share right away. Then you see, the steps to follow when you are to write it in tens, in hundreds, and in what? In thousands. Okay. How do we write when we have that? So let me just check really quick. So we can have the table right away. Yeah, I'm almost getting it. Almost getting the table. Yeah, should be right away, should be available shortly. It's just in this folder here. Right, so I seem to have got the table. Okay, so let me have the table right away here. So this is what we have, okay, in thousands, in hundreds, in tens, in ones. Then after a decimal point, the first number is called a tenth. The second number is called a hundredth. The third number is called what? The third number is called a thousands. Then we continue that way, okay? We keep on continuing like that. Oh, the screen seemed to have disappeared. Let me bring it back. So yes, now what I was saying is that if we have a table, all right, if we do have a table, just to help us with this counting thing, then let's see it this way. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. If we have only one number before a decimal point, that is called a 1, normally known as ones. If we have two numbers, then they are called tens. For three numbers, that is 1, 2, 3, hundreds. Then when there are 4, thousands. Now the first number after a decimal point is called a tenth. The second number is in position for hundreds. Then the third number is in position of a thousandths. Then followed by 10,000 and what? 100,000. Now, from that, we can go ahead to do what? We can go ahead to find the value of this. Now, notice that we have a 6 and a 7. Those are two numbers after a decimal point. And so they are under 100. Okay, there are two numbers. They are under 100. So when we divide that, what do we get by 100? Well, when we divide by 100, we will have to move, the decimal point 2 steps to the left. So we'll be moving beyond this one, then to the next step. What would that be? That would be 0.0167. Yes, those are 2 steps. When we move it from the initial position that was here, then we move it 1 step, that is a tenth. Another step, that is 100. So that is how we do what? That is how we calculate the value of what? or 5/3. Now, the next question is given in percentage. So now in percentage, that is part B of this activity. We have been given the number in percentage. Now in percentage, already it is up to step 3. So what do we do then? Well, we just write it with what? With the fraction notation. And in the fraction notation form, we will be having what? A 90 and a 100. That is what we get. And from it, we can go ahead to do what? To simplify. Okay? So now notice that there is 100 here. And because there is 100 there as the denominator, okay? There is 100 as a denominator. We call that 90 hundredths. Okay? 90 hundredths. And because it is a 90 hundred, that means there must be 2 values. Okay? From what we have here, there must be 2 values after a decimal point. The values will be a 0 and a 9. So we will be writing these 2. Those are 2 numbers. You see here? So for 100, you must have 2 what? 2 numbers after the decimal point. That means the decimal point will be right there. And so to complete it, we put a 0. So this is how we calculate what? A 90%. A 90% will now be in fraction 0.90. That would be the value of this. And in common fraction, okay, in common fraction, we would have 9 divided by 10. Okay, so this one is in what? In decimal. Then, well, let me include it here. So this 90% in common fraction would give us, right down here. Okay, so this 90% in common fraction would be a 9 over a 10 because this 0 will cancel with that. And after that, what do we have? We only have a 9 out of a 10. Yes, that is what we will be having. Yes, a 9 there. Out of a 10, yes. In common fraction, that is in fraction. Okay, just like the way we did in what? In part A. In part A, we had first to simplify 5/3 to get 1.67. And since there is this 100, we want to move the decimal point, okay, 2 steps to the left from where it is. We move it 2 steps to the left. And so when we move it 2 steps to the left, like from here, it would be after 1, it will be right here. Now, the next thing we want to do is activity 1 part C. Now activity 1 part C, well, part C is given what? In decimal fraction. So what do we have? We have 0.01. Okay, so we get back to this table here. Now notice that from the table, if we have 2 numbers after a decimal point, these 2 numbers they are called, like for example, in this case, we have two numbers, the second number being 1. This is called 100. It's called a hundredth. And because of that, we can write it in fraction with the 1 being the number we are talking about, and then the 100 being the denominator. This is the expression of 0,01 in what? We say in fraction. Then in percentage, okay, well, let's see how it will come. So this 0.01 in percentage, that is 0.01 percentage, the 0.01 will be written as 0,01 with a percent, or 0.01 hundredth. You see? Rather, no, it won't be 0.01 in percent, it will just be 1%. Sorry for that. It will be a 1%. Just like this one here. So this is how we get there, because we had seen that if it is a 600th, then it is a 6%. And now here we have seen that it is a 100th, and so it is a 1%. Now we can go ahead to the next activity. Now to the next activity, we have been given what? We have been given 11 out of 12. So we write this down. This is 11 divided by 12. We're supposed to write this in what? In percentage. So in percentage, we will have, okay, from what we have been given, well, let's start with the first. The first step is to write it in 100. So we will have this as 11 out of 12 hundredth. See? 100th. And now, in percent, it will be 11 out of what? It will be 11 out of 12%. Now, after writing it in percent, the next thing we want to deal with is to write it in complete fraction without this symbol for percent. And what will that be? Well, we will then be having the 11 out of 12 as the what? As the numerator, and the 100 as a denominator. Now, this way, we will be having, well, 11 out of 12, we can first simplify that. That is 11 divided by 12. What do we get? 0.96917, rather, 0.917. So this is going to be, for the numerator, 0.917. And for the denominator, we get what? 100. So that is what we have. Now the question here is, how do we get to that, and how do we then go forward? Now notice that this one is now the same as 0.917 hundred. 0.917 hundred. You see? And then that therefore means, okay, notice this one is a 10, 100, 1,000, a thousand. This already, the numerator, the way it is, 9 is already after 1 decimal place, and so it is considered a 10. 1 is already the second, is already 2 steps after the decimal point, and so it's considered 100th. And then 7 is the third number after the decimal point, and so it's considered 1,000. Now, this again is being divided by 100. You see? In other words, the number which is in front of the decimal point, which is a 1. In this case, is going to help us in dividing by 100. So if we have a number like 0 and we are considering it 100, it therefore means the decimal point must move 2 steps to the left of it. Okay, let's first have it like this. Let's first write 0, 917. So if we write it this way, let's first put some few zeros, like, well, maybe 2 in front there. Now, since it is this number here, 0, which we consider, okay, since it is this number which we consider when we are dividing, to consider 0 as 100, that means we have to move the decimal point from here, 1 step, 2 steps to the left. And so we will be having a decimal point there, and we will remove this one. And that will be the value in what? In decimal fraction. So in percentage, it is what? It is 0.917 percentage. Okay? Or let me even write it here. That is 0.917 what? Percent. Then now we can break it down into this. Now the next thing that we want to look at is this other activity, but this activity, which is given activity, which is on 75, this one here. We have reached 75, that's where we have reached so far. This 75. So we want to see how we are going to deal with the what? With the 75. So let's call that activity E. So if this is an activity E, then it is given as a 70 what? It's a 75%, which is the same as 7,500. And because of that, okay, we could still write it as 7,500. Yes. And after writing it like that, we therefore want to write it in fraction. So in fraction, it will be 75 over 100. And because it's going to be a 75 over 100, well, this is, as we have already indicated here, a 7,500. And from this table of our 7,500, from this table, what are we going to get for this? Well, it looks like the decimal point is right out here. And so, to handle this case nicely, the next thing that we want to do is, notice that for this number to be called a 7,500 for 100, like this one here, decimal point must be 2 steps on its left. Okay, like this is the first place, then this is the second place. The third place is where we have the decimal point. So here, this is the first place, this is the second place. The third place here is where we have the decimal place, so decimal point. So we can have that, then we'll now be having 75. That is called the 7,500. Yes, For 100, the decimal point must be 2 steps on its left. We put 0 there to complete. And so what have we got? Well, in ordinary fraction or in common fraction, we have it like this: 75 divided by what? By 100. And in decimal fraction, we have it what? As a 0.75. Then now, here we have the next question, which is 2.5. Now, 2.5 is going to be considered activity 1 part F. It's 2.5. We have to write it as a percentage and also in the common fraction, because it's given here as what? It's given here as a decimal. So we will be having what? A 2.5 percentage. A 2.5%. And we can call it also a 2.5 hundredth. Yes, a 2.5 hundredth. And then we look at our table here. When we look at what is in the table, to be called a hundredth, okay, to be called a hundredth, decimal point must be 1, 2 steps on your left. So to be called a 2.5 hundredth, decimal point must be from where it is to 1 and 2 steps on the left, okay? So that means if we had like, all right, 2.5, but if we had some other number, 5 there, yes. So if we had any other number, well, let's represent them with a 0 because we don't have a number there. We just put a 0 to help with what? Identification. So now to be called a 2.5 hundredth, this decimal point must move from where it is 1 step, 2 steps onto the left. And so the decimal point will be right here after the first 0. And so we will not be having what? A decimal point in this original position. And so in decimal fraction, rather in percentage, we are supposed to be writing in percentage. Well, in percentage, we already having it here, 2.5%. We already having it as 2.5%. It is given as what? It is given as, well, let's first check. Well, in decimal, it's 2.5. And so in percentage, what is it going to be? Well, in percentage, it would be this percent. Okay, it would be this percent. 0.025. No, it will be 2.5%. This is what we have. Well, could it be that we could add something onto this? Yes, we could add something onto this quantity here. In decimal, it's already a 2.5. So in percentage, what would it be? In percentage, well, if we had it here, we would divide it by 100 to call it a percentage. And after dividing it by 100, we would get this. Oh, sorry. To get it back to this one here, okay, instead we are supposed not to divide it by 100, but to multiply by 100. So this isn't correct. Sorry for this. Sorry. So in percentage, since we are moving in the reverse direction, we are going to multiply. Percent, because notice, if we are moving from common fraction to percentage, we divide by 100. The value can also be written as a decimal, but this time we are moving from here to come this way. That means we have to multiply by 100. Yeah. And when we multiply by 100 in percentage, it will then be 250. Okay, that is 100. Now in what? In percentage. So that would give us what? That would give us 250. 250 what? Percent. And so in common fraction, it won't be this one now. In common fraction, it will be 250 divided by 100. So it will be a 250 divided by a 100. Which will still simplify to what? To 2.5. Yes, this is what we get. Now, notice that care should be taken on the direction you will have taken. If you're moving, if you're doing the calculation from left of the table to the right, you divide by 100. But if you're coming from right to the left, you multiply. And for this reason, the next activity, which is activity what? Let's call it activity G. That is activity 1 part G, which is 11 over 40. So 11 over 40, 11 over 40. We would like first to simplify this in fraction. So we then have to use our calculator. That is 11 divided by 40. That is 0.275. That will give us 0.7 to rather 0.275. 275, yes. That is what we get. Now from here, the next thing we want to do is to write it as a percentage. And so we'll be having 0.275 percentage, which can still be written as 0.275. That means, therefore, is that, okay, to be considered a hundredth, that means from where the decimal point is, there must be 2 steps on the left, okay? To be considered a hundredth, okay? To be considered a hundredth, from where the decimal point is, okay? Because now we are referring to this first number. So there must be, the decimal point must be 2 steps onto the left. And so we don't have any other number. Let's just put some zeros there. Well, then we have a decimal point. Then we have 275. So it's like we have to divide by 100. And so we are using this 0 as our reference point. So for a number to be considered a hundredth, okay? For example, for a 6 to be considered a hundredth, the decimal point must be 2 steps onto the left. The number we are considering a hundredth in this question is 0.275. Notice how we are counting 0.275. The first number we are counting is 0, meaning we must start from here. 1, 2 steps onto the left of 0, the number we started with counting. And so the decimal point will be here. The decimal point will no longer be where it was. This way, we now call this a what? A decimal. But in percentage, we have this. In percentage, we have 0.275%. 0.725%. Just that. The next thing we want to look at is activity 1 part H. What are we supposed to do with activity 1 part H? Well, activity 1 part H we have been given, well, that is also the second last activity, 21%. So we really want to work on that quick. 21 what? 21%. So I'm going to write it as 21 hundredths. Yes. So now if we can write it as 2100, well, how is this going to be? This is going to be 21 over what? Over 100. Yes, that is the meaning of 2100. And what this then means is, remember we are counting 21. The 2 comes first in our pronunciation, 2100. So now because of this, what we are going to do, okay, we come back to the table, we see, where is the decimal point? That we don't have the decimal point here. Oh, we don't have the decimal point. So we look at the last number now, which is 1. So that means the decimal point is after 1. So we must move the decimal point 1, 2 steps onto the left. And when we do that, well, from 21, moving the decimal point 1 and 2 steps, it will be right there. We now place the 0 to balance things up. And when we do that, what we get is the decimal fraction, which is what? The decimal fraction, which is the value which is needed here. Then now in common fraction, it will be 21 out of 100. This is the version for the common fraction. This is the what? The decimal. The decimal. Then the last bit is activity 1 part I. We have been given 0.125. Now notice this time we are moving from left, we are coming to, rather we are moving from right, we are coming to left. So in percentage, we will have to do what? We will have to multiply this by 100. If we do that, what do we get? We will get 12 point what? We will get 12.5. And now we call this 12.5%. And in decimal notation, this 12.5 is going to be what? This 12.5 is going to be divided by what? By 100. This way. This way. What do we get? Well, we get a value which was originally given here. But now we call this the fraction notation, or the common fraction. We call this the percentage notation, you see? So this is the percentage one under this, then this is the fraction one. So this is how we handle this question. Okay, so once again, if a number is already given under decimal, to take it to percentage, multiply by 100. To take it to common fraction, what you have got divided by 100. That is what you're going to get in common fraction. If a number is given in common fraction, then divide it by 100 to get, put it over 100 to get the percentage notation. or attach the percentage notation to it. That is, it will now be that number next to the percentage notation, which we have seen. The percentage notation is this one. That is what we have. Then now to take it to decimal notation, what you do is you divide by 100. That gives you the what? The number in decimal notation. Now, I think I can get a number just to have for you for a practice. Number for a practice. Let me see if I can get the number for a practice. Really quick. Yes. So in this, we are supposed to do what? We are supposed to complete the table. And so because we are supposed to complete the table, we have these quantities here. So I'm putting this right away into what? I'm putting it right away into an activity for you. I would like to call it activity 2. So activity 2 will be this that you need to fill. Yes, this is activity 2 that you need to complete. Complete this. Here given in decimal, here you write in percentage, here in common fraction. For example, what is the common fraction for this? Well, there is only one number after the decimal point. So this is called a tenth. So under common fraction, it will now be 3/10. In percentage, what you do, this 3, since you're moving from decimal to percentage, okay, it's like you're moving from smaller to a little bit big. You multiply by 100. So you multiply 0.3 times 100, you get it in percentage. You put this over 10, you get it in common fraction. Then from common fraction to decimal, you first divide this, you get 0.25. Then in percentage, this 0.25 which you have got, you multiply by 100 and you get it here. Now notice that the table is not exactly the way it is appearing up here, because here the smallest is coming first, then the percentage, and then the fraction. But here they've exchanged the position for decimal and fraction. Rather, the position for decimal and percentage. So this is how you would handle this question. So please work on this activity, get it done. And when the activity is done, find it appropriate to do what? Find it appropriate to submit what you will have calculated. And then I will be checking through. That way we can move on right away.